You have $800 million. Nobody knows. Not your neighbor, the one who waves at you every morning while dragging his trash can to the curb. Not the barista at the coffee shop on 4th Street who spells your name wrong on the cup every single time. John instead of John. And you never correct her, because correcting her would mean explaining who you are. And explaining who you are is the one thing you can never do. Not even your cousin, the one who still asks if you're doing okay for money at Thanksgiving, genuinely concerned, genuinely unaware that the man he's talking to could buy the restaurant they're sitting in 11 times over and not notice the withdrawal. You drive a 2019 Honda Accord. Gray. A small dent on the rear bumper from a parking lot in Ohio. You don't even remember visiting. The check engine light has been on for 6 weeks. You haven't taken it in. This is not modesty. This is architecture. Every choice you make now, the car, the apartment, the haircut, you get every 5 weeks at the same $22 barbershop, all of it is a wall. And you built the wall yourself, brick by brick, because you learned something most people never have to learn. Money this size doesn't protect you. It exposes you. And exposure, at $800 million, doesn't feel like power. It feels like a spotlight in a room you can never leave. Let's go back. Because you weren't always invisible. There was a night 11 years ago when you sat at your kitchen table, the old one, the one with the wobbly leg you fixed with a folded napkin, and you stared at a number on a screen. $2.3 million. Your first real exit. Your company, the one you built out of a spare bedroom on a laptop that overheated if you ran too many tabs, had just sold. You cried. Not from joy, from relief. The kind of relief that comes after years of holding your breath without realizing you were holding it. You called your mother. You told her. She was quiet for a long time. And then she said, "So we're okay now?" And you said, "Yes, Mom, we're okay now." And for about 6 months, that was true. You bought her a new roof. You paid off her car. You took your dad to dinner someplace with cloth napkins and let him order the steak without checking the price first. That was the first door, and on the other side of it was a version of you that thought, naively, that this was the finish line, that $2.3 million was the number where the fear stops. It wasn't. It was only the beginning of a different fear, because 2 years later, the company you'd started after that one, the second one, the one nobody believed in until suddenly everyone did, sold for $61 million. And this is where it started to change. Not the money. You. At $2 million, people ask you for advice. At $61 million, people ask you for money. The texts started coming differently. "Hey, been a while. Hope you're good. Quick question." You knew, before you even opened them, what the question would be. A cousin needed $40,000 for a business that would fail within 14 months. A college friend needed $15,000 just to bridge a gap, and never mentioned it again after you sent it. Not a thank you, not an update, nothing. Like the money had evaporated into a version of you that didn't need acknowledgement. You said yes to almost all of it, because saying no felt like admitting you'd changed, and you weren't ready to admit that yet. Here's the truth. Nobody tells you about that stage of wealth. It is not about buying things. You didn't buy a yacht. You didn't buy a watch collection. You bought something much quieter and much more expensive. You bought distance. Distance from the people who used to know you before the number existed. Distance you didn't ask for and didn't want, but that showed up anyway, uninvited, sitting between you and everyone you loved like a fog that never lifted. At $61 million, you stopped telling people what you did for a living, not out of secrecy at first, out of exhaustion, because the moment the number came up, even accidentally, even in passing, the conversation changed shape. People started performing for you, or resenting you, or both, in the same sentence, in the same breath. So you learned to disappear in plain sight. The size of your life must shrink as the size of your money grows. Not because you can't afford more, because more visibility means more exposure. And more exposure means more people trying to find the edges of what you have, so they can figure out how much of it belongs to them. You moved once, from the city to a suburb 40 minutes out, into a house that cost $640,000, a completely unremarkable number for the neighborhood, the kind of house a dentist buys or a mid-level executive. Nothing that would make anyone tilt their head. You could have bought the house at the top of the hill, the one with the gate, the long driveway, and the security booth. You looked at it once. You didn't buy it. A house like that doesn't hide you. It announces you. And announcing yourself, you'd already learned, was the most expensive mistake a wealthy person could make. There's a moment that happens to almost everyone who crosses into real money. A specific moment, usually alone, usually late at night, when the performance drops and the truth sits down across from you at the table. Yours happened at 1:47 in the morning, 14 months after the second exit. You were sitting in the dark kitchen of that $640,000 house, laptop open, the blue light the only thing illuminating your face, and you opened a spreadsheet you'd never let yourself open honestly before. Every dollar you'd given away. Every dollar you'd loaned and never seen again. Every dollar sitting in an account that you were, if you were honest with yourself, afraid to touch, afraid to enjoy, afraid that spending it would somehow prove that you didn't deserve it in the first place. The number on the screen was $58 million, liquid, sitting there, doing nothing, earning interest while you drank instant coffee because you'd never updated the habit that used to save you $4 a day back when $4 a day mattered. And you sat there, and you cried again. Not from relief this time, from loneliness, because you realized, in that kitchen, at that hour, that you had built a life so careful, so hidden, so armored against being used, that you had also armored it against being known. The two things, you discovered, were the same wall. You couldn't let people close enough to take from you without also letting them close enough to see you. And you'd chosen, without ever consciously deciding to keep everyone on the outside of that wall. That was the second door, and it didn't open into more money. It opened into 11 more years of building. Quieter this time, smarter this time. No more spare bedrooms, no more overheating laptops. This time it was 3 companies, 2 acquisitions, one that failed completely and taught you more than either of the ones that worked. And slowly, without a single dramatic moment, the number climbed past $100 million. Then $300 million. Then, 4 years ago, past the number that most people will never even be able to picture. $800 million. Not on paper. Not tied up in something you can't touch. Actual, liquid, accessible. $800 million sitting across index funds, real estate you never visit, and 3 businesses that run themselves now without you checking in more than once a month. And here is the part nobody prepares you for. The fear didn't go away at $800 million. It just changed its name. At $2 million, you were afraid of losing it. At $61 million, you were afraid of people taking it. At $800 million, you were afraid of something quieter and stranger. You are afraid of what happens if anyone ever finds out the full shape of it. So you live inside a set of rules now, unspoken, refined over years, and if you laid them out loud, they would sound almost absurd to someone who hasn't lived them. Never be the best-dressed person in the room. You own 4 dress shirts, blue, white, and 2 in a gray you can't quite name. They cost $38 each from a store that used to fit your budget when your budget was real. You could buy a shirt for $1,200. You have, once. You wore it one time, to a dinner you didn't want to attend, and you felt like an actor wearing a costume that didn't fit the character. You gave it away. Let people underestimate you and never correct them. When the guy at the auto shop assumes you're stretching your budget by fixing the Accord instead of replacing it, you let him think that. When your neighbor complains about property taxes and assumes you're groaning right along with him, you groan right along with him. It costs you nothing. It buys you everything. It buys you the one thing $800 million can't purchase directly: the ability to walk through a room unnoticed. There is a particular kind of loneliness that lives inside this invisibility, and it doesn't look like the loneliness people expect. It's not dramatic. It's not a man standing at the window of a mansion staring out at nothing. It's smaller than that. It's sitting at your cousin's birthday dinner, listening to him worry out loud about a $1,200 car repair, watching the stress sit on his shoulders like a physical weight, knowing that you could resolve that stress in under 4 seconds with a bank transfer, and choosing to say nothing, not because you don't care, because the moment you fix it, you stop being his cousin and start being his bank. And once that shift happens, it never shifts back. You learned that the hard way 3 years ago with a friend named Marcus, someone you'd known since you were 19, someone who used to split a $6 pizza with you when neither of you had money for the whole thing. Marcus needed $180,000 to save his restaurant. You gave it to him without hesitation, without even framing it as a loan, because framing it as a loan felt insulting to 20 years of friendship. 6 months later, Marcus stopped returning your calls, not out of ingratitude. You understood that eventually, out of shame, because every time he saw your name on his phone, he didn't see his old friend anymore. He saw the size of what he owed emotionally, a debt no interest rate could measure, and it was easier for him to disappear than to face it every day. You lost him. Not to a lawsuit, not to a falling out, not to anything you could point to and say, there, that's where it broke. You lost him to the money itself, to the sheer weight of what $180,000 does to a friendship that used to run on $6 pizzas. This is the part of the story people never film. They film the house. They film the number. Nobody films the empty chair at dinner where Marcus used to sit. The hardest one. The one that took the longest to accept. Help people in ways they can never trace back to you. An anonymous scholarship fund, $340,000 a year, roaded through a foundation with a name that means nothing to anyone. A mortgage paid off quietly for a woman at your old church, arranged through a lawyer who never mentions your name in the paperwork. You have helped more people in the last 4 years, in total dollars, than in the 11 years before it, and almost none of them will ever know it was you. That, it turns out, is the final shape of wealth at this level. Not spending it, not showing it, directing it silently, like a current under the surface of other people's lives, moving things forward while you stay exactly where you've always been, in a gray Honda Accord, with a check engine light you still haven't fixed, driving to a coffee shop where they still spell your name wrong. There's a specific kind of test you started running somewhere around your 3rd year at this level, without ever calling it a test. When you meet someone new, a neighbor, a parent from your kid's school, someone at the gym you go to at 6 a.m., specifically because nobody else is awake yet, you watch how they treat you before they know anything about you. The mechanic who overcharges you by $80 because you look like someone who won't check the invoice. The stranger who holds the door and means it, expecting nothing back. You collect these moments quietly, filing them away, because they're the only honest data you have left. Once people learn what you're actually worth, the data stops being honest. Everyone becomes slightly more generous with their smiles, slightly more interested in your opinions, and you can never again fully trust whether it's real. The one you never say out loud to anyone, not even to the few people who do know. Trust what people do before they have a reason to perform for you. It's not cynicism. It's the only compass you have left in a world where your number changes the weather in every room you walk into. There's a question you get asked sometimes, always by people who don't know the real number. Always framed the same way. If you had enough money, would you tell people? You used to think the answer was yes. Somewhere around $2 million, you imagined a version of yourself standing in front of everyone you loved, revealing everything, and being met with joy, with pride, with nothing but warmth. That version of the story doesn't survive contact with $61 million. It definitely doesn't survive contact with $800 million. Because what you learned, slowly, expensively, is that money this size doesn't just change how people see you. It changes how you have to see them. Every new relationship gets a silent audit running underneath it. A question you never ask out loud, but never stop asking internally. Does this person want me, or do they want what I could give them? Most of the time, you'll never know the real answer. So you built a life where the question rarely gets to come up at all. Is that sad? Some days, yes. There are nights, fewer now than there used to be, but they still come, when you sit in that same kitchen, a different house now, but the same kind of quiet, and you feel the size of the distance between the man in the Honda Accord and the number sitting in the accounts he never mentions. You feel how strange it is to have solved the problem that used to keep you up at night, the fear of not having enough, only to trade it for a different problem that nobody warns you about, the fear of being fully known. But most days it isn't sad. Most days it feels like peace. A specific, hard-earned kind of peace that doesn't come from the number itself, but from finally understanding what the number is for. The number was never the destination. You know that now. The scholarship fund. The mortgage paid off in silence. The nephew's tuition covered through a trust he thinks is a scholarship he earned on his own merit. Entirely his own merit. Which, in a way, it is. Because you made sure the money never touched his hands directly enough to change how he sees himself. That's the finish line. Not the $800 million sitting in the accounts. What the $800 million quietly becomes in other people's lives, while your own life stays small enough to walk through unnoticed. You still drive the Accord. The check engine light is still on. You'll probably get it looked at next month, or the month after. There's no urgency, because urgency was never really about the car. Tomorrow morning, you'll walk into that same coffee shop. The barista will call out, "John," and you won't correct her, because correcting her was never the point. The point was always this: to move through the world exactly as you are, unnoticed, unremarkable, invisible in all the ways that keep you safe, and powerful in all the ways nobody will ever get to see. That is what $800 million actually buys, when you've had it long enough to understand it. Not attention, the absence of it, and somewhere inside that absence, quietly, on your own terms, is everything that actually matters.